Hello, you beautiful nerds of the world, Taurock at your service, and normally, hopefully, by the time this video is out, today is the day. Today is the end of the Death Battles Kickstarter campaign, and we finally have the confirmation Death Battle is saved! Just barely.
Oh my goodness!
So it's been a full month since Death Battle has come out of the radio silence, revealed their plan to go fully independent, and launch the Kickstarter campaign to help fund the first 4 episodes they were already working on. And after a month of just, absolutely crushing the original goal, we have been hit with stretch goals after stretch goals, most of them being matchups they are guaranteeing to work on for the future of the show. So, like plenty of Death Battle YouTubers before me, I'm going to rattle them all up and tell you my opinion about every single one of them. For better and for worse.
I am your father. Nuh-uh. The fuck you mean, nuh-uh?
Omni-Man vs. Bardock, the battle of the alien conquerors, the Goku vs. Superman, but it has a bit of gray hair on the side, a white Monster energy drink in hand, and he's wearing one of those weird toxic masculine t-shirts you find on Artist Streets, okay? Now, this is a good start because I don't have any particular opinion about this matchup, except that I'm really surprised that they wanted to bring back Omni-Man, despite being absent for only 1 season, and that they didn't directly shift their attentions to other Invincible characters, like Adam Eve or, Invincible himself. But I guess it was a Death Battle cast for a reason. The Death Battle team seemed to be very interested in this matchup, and I guess they wanted to give Omni-Man a more proper deep dive into his character and not limit themselves to spoilers and so on, like they did with Omni-Man vs. Homelander. So, as someone who's not into Invincible, I guess I'm excited to learn some new stuff about him. Bardock is fine. He's not necessarily a character I think of when thinking about Dragon Ball characters that need to be in Death Battle, but it's always welcome. Plus we get a great ape fight, which is neat. Even though I'm sure it's gonna fall back to fighting his Super Saiyan form, which is apparently pretty popular. The opposite of that among the community, from what I've heard about. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Rumors are spreading that Death Battle is going to use a semi-composite, so everything about Bardock except heroes. So we're gonna get Father of Goku special, the Dragon Ball Minus, Dragon Ball Super, episode of Bardock, things like that. I don't know what any of these words mean to me because I'm not into Dragon Ball, but I'm sure you can make something out of this. Which I think is fair. Bardock, from my knowledge, is a very anecdotal character regarding Dragon Ball canon, so you have to pick what you have. Even if it comes at the expense of Omni-Man's victory not being as secure as it was last time. I mean, it was already a step up from Homelander, but now I'm completely lost as to who I think would win. Not that I care much. Again, I'm not into Invincible, I'm not into Dragon Ball, but it's the sport of it. It's animated by Devil Artemis, which is great because he's good at animating Dragon Ball, and that's all I can really say about it. But if you want something, I have much more to talk about.
I've come to make an announcement.
Always down and ready to ride.
Bowser vs. Eggman, oh boy. I'm sorry this is so early, but this is where my hype is at its highest in this entire gallery. I'm a very big Sonic fan. Bowser is my favorite character ever, and I am so stoked that they're going all in with this matchup and give both of them all the minions they can bring. Honestly, I would have been hyped no matter who and how Bowser was going to fight, but this match in particular is a bit important to me because it was one of the first matchups I actually wrote a script about way back in the day, on my Warcraft roleplay community forum thing, when I still had the motivation of youth and the ability to actually write something. To be honest, if you're curious, don't read it. It's just a blatant copy of Eggman vs. Wily's ideas, but with some Bowser flair added added to it and replaced the Mega Man characters by Bowser's minions. That's literally all it is. But it was still one of the first Death Battle matchups I've put a lot of energy and time into creating. So seeing this matchup being brought to life all these years later, with kind of like the same mentality going on into this, with like the armies and stuff, it just hits for me. It just hits so hard for me, you have no idea. I really want Bowser to speak in this fight. Like, we had a bit of a hint of Eggman's voice with his totally canon quote.
I miss my wife, Tails. I miss her a lot.
But I don't know if Bowser will have one, which is sad, because I'd really like it if they gave him Austin Lee Matthews, you know, the one who was the voice of Poe in his Death Battle, just to get the Jack Black theme going. Also, huge props to Morrow, the animator of this fight, because from what I can see from the sneak peek, it already looks phenomenal. The Egg Dragoon particularly looks fantastic. It's one of my favorite Eggman mechs, so I'm really attached to it and I love what I'm seeing here. My only fears going into this is that by giving them everything they have, I'm afraid that Bowser might lose this fight, and since Power Scalers have a weird tendency to wank Sonic characters with no real connections, I'm afraid that I might not recognize their interpretation of Eggman. Am I out of touch? No, it's the Power Scalers who are wrong if Bowser loses. That's how it works, right?
Oh, and one more thing. Who's that gangly looking fella you got with you there?
The Swan strikes again. Considering this is supposedly a bonus episode, I almost didn't want to include this matchup here because I know I'm just not gonna make friends with this. But then I know you're going to ask for my opinion about it, so hear me out. This is not a death battle. Like, this is not a death battle. It's a crossover idea, an interesting one at that, but it's not one that is suited for a death battle. To me, a death battle is supposed to be a scenario where two characters, or more if you want, has one objective in common, and it's to inflict death upon the other before the other inflicts the one with death. But everywhere I look, when talking about Light versus Columbo, it's always more about, can Columbo unmask Light Yagami? Can Columbo prove that Light Yagami killed someone, or that he's guilty, and send him to justice? And meanwhile, Light Yagami, he just has to feign ignorance, I guess, to not get caught. But not getting caught until what? Columbo's name is easy to find. I'm sure Light can end the investigation whenever he wants, so what's the goal exactly? And I'm sure those are all interesting questions, but see, this is my problem with it. If you have to change the rules of the death battle, change the objectives of the death battle, which is to determine who would win a fight to the death, and take away the battle of a death battle for this matchup to work, then it clearly doesn't work as a death battle. And mind you, this is the same issue I have with Light's other popular matchup, which is Light versus Walter White, where it sounds more like a Reddit argument about their philosophies and relationship with justice and how they see the world, when if it was a real fight, then it would just be over in one shot. It's like the little meme I saw of the guy who's like, debate me, and then he gets lasered to death. And the Death Battle team clearly seemed to agree with me, given that they clarified it to be a bonus episode that's gonna play very differently from the traditional episodes. And it's not helped by the fact that it seems very clear who Mr. Swan wants to see come out as the winner. Now, despite everything I said, I trust Liam and the Death Battle team, who will be working very hard on this, and I wish for everyone who actually wants this confrontation to get everything they could get out of this. But personally, I feel like I'm just going to watch it for the memes and nothing else. So more power to you, I guess. Speaking of memes, do I need to say we need Gianni to voice Columbo? No? No, I don't need to say that. We're agreeing on that, right? Okay, good.
This ruffles my jammies!
Kratos versus Asura, the Battle of the Gods of Wrath, a matchup that has had my final vote in the Tournament of Champions and the forever number 2 of every ballot it has come across so far. Now, this is one of the many matchups on this list that have featured in Season 10's tournament and have lost. Now, I have to come clean, I've actually had a whole rant prepared about how making official a matchup that lost the Tournament of Champions in the season it was intended for was a bit of a dick move, regardless of if I like the matchup or not, since I've heard a lot about this being a possibility even before Rooster Teeth's shutdown, and I always felt like if you were wanting to do a matchup anyway, you could have given the spotlight to some other matchups that were in the ballots but didn't made it to the tournament, yada yada yada. However, given that they don't do seasons anymore and the huge crisis that has been Rooster Teeth's shutdown, I largely prefer this outcome over the one I've been dreading for the past month, which is living in a world without any death battle, so you know, all is forgiven. And honestly, it's a matchup that's kind of grown on me over the years. When I first heard this matchup way back when, I used to think it was just part of what I call the angry roulettes. You know, Hulk, Kratos, Asura, Atrocitus, Broly, Doomsday, they're all characters that I've seen being put against each other just because they're very strong and they're just very angry, and that's about it. And Kratos Asura definitely had that vibe for me for a time, but with the modern depiction of God of War, which we definitely needed to see one day, there's like kind of a new extra layer that's been added to this match that I really appreciate. Now they're both godly fathers who are angry because they care so much about their children. I mean, like, Kratos was a dad before, but he already lost everything, so his anger was only fueled by petty vengeance against the first god that caused him a mild inconvenience. But now they both have that something to lose. They both channel that anger to protect the ones they love against the world. I'm just there for it. It just clicked for me. I appreciate this matchup far more for the fatherly energy than the anger part, which is still going to be a thing, because, come on, it's Kratos and Asura. And I didn't mention it, but I played the original God of War trilogy when I was young, and while I only watched playthroughs of Asura's Wrath and the modern God of War games, they still remain extremely dear to me, so I'm deeply excited to see what they're going to do with these two. Also, it's very ironic that this matchup had its own teaser, while Wile E. Coyote Tom has yet to get any news about it. The last laugh, as they say.
I thought you were dead.
My death was greatly exaggerated.
That's right, one of the stretch goals was that super level backers and higher will be able to vote for a rematch of an older episode of our choice. And since I'm one of such backers, I'll have my vote thrown into the mix. So there's a lot of options I would want, some are even begged to happen by the entire community, and they all have valid arguments going for them, not gonna lie. But the one that's been on my mind pretty consistently that I would like to vote for is Zelda vs. Peach. These two have had so much new abilities and accomplishments since their first appearance that I genuinely think this can be a completely different fight. Like, we can bring all the classic Mario power-ups, Zelda's new wand from Echoes of Wisdom, I don't remember how it's called. We can get like a cool rapier fight with Peach's musketeer form in Showtime, and you have Zelda's rapier from Hyrule Warriors. Or you can have Zelda turn into a massive dragon and have like Peach battle it in the air. Like, there's so many new ideas you can pull from this matchup that can look very dope in my opinion. And it's magnified by the fact that my motivation for this matchup, it's genuine. There's a lot of people who want a rematch of an episode because they have this self-righteous white knight thing where they go, this episode is the devil and everything about it was garbage. This death battle must be brought to justice and they have to do these characters right this time and you have to make up for everything that's wrong about the previous. So decrees the me and the Inquisition of quality. And it's like always a little aggravating to me. And personally, I liked the first Zelda vs. Peach. I have no problem with it. I think it was a great fight and the matchup is timeless. Did it have its flaws that need fixing, quote-unquote? Absolutely. The rundown wasn't great, some call it sexist, but I think it was more because of general early 2000s video game humor, which was sexist, don't get me wrong.
Mario, these mushrooms are making me see funny!
Oh, Mario, wait, oh no, you jumped on that goof, oh, it's so bloody!
Brought to you by Dorkly.
But when I look back at the fights, I remember it fondly. It was very in character for both, even when it played the whole damsel in distress. It was funny, especially the whole slap scene. That was the right amount of silly. The point is, I loved the original fights, the original matchup, and I just want more of it. So that's why I'm gonna vote for Zelda versus Peach. Even though I don't think it's gonna happen, people are probably going to vote for Mewtwo versus Shadow or Master Chief versus Doom Guy. Like, I've seen lots of campaigns about these two, and I think this video is gonna come out too late for me to ask you to vote for this matchup, so I'm just crossing fingers, I don't care.
We gotta definitely write a song about how we do not diddle kids. Do not diddle kids, it's no good diddling kids.
Mahito versus Shigaraki. This one's gonna be very brief, because I've never heard of this matchup before. I was briefly familiar with Shigaraki since I watched a bit of My Hero Academia, but since I never laid eyes on Jujutsu Kaisen, Mahito was completely unknown to me. But I like it nonetheless. I get it. Anime shitheads who mess you up by laying a hand on you, it can lead to some cool game of cat and mouse. Like, have to catch you without catching me and all that jazz. Neat stuff. Okay, what else do we have?
Oh, that's real nice.
Avatar Aang, the Last Airbender versus the Traveler of Genshin Impact. Honestly, look, leave this matchup alone, man. Leave this matchup alone. I've seen a bit too much negativity around it, and it's just uncalled for. It's not as popular or as hype as the other, but like, it's perfectly fine. Sure, Aang returning makes me completely indifferent. Maybe Ben won't be sick this time, I guess. And I was more hoping Illidan vs Zhao would be brought back for a Genshin Impact fight, since, you know, there's a Warcraft character involved, and I'd be more of a fan of it, because I'd be more involved in the conversation. But aside from that, it's harmless at worst. Honestly, I just had to take one look at what the fans of this matchup had to say, and I can see the good in it. A cool fight between elementalists with a flair that, apparently in gameplay, having different elements colliding in Genshin Impact creates completely different elements. It can have a lot of potential interactions that can be pretty to look at. I don't know about the character dynamic, since the Traveler is kind of a white bread of a character because they're supposed to be a player character, but it's not like Death Battle hasn't handled that before. But I don't know why, this was around the announcement of that matchup that the hype started to slowly die out and people started to go as far as taking away their contributions, which I hope is unrelated, but man, the maidenless behavior I seen around that matchup, it was just like a little absurd, not gonna lie.
Who's that Pokemon?
It's Pikachu!
It's
Shadow Realm, Jimbo.
Ash vs Yugi, the legendary playground rivalry. Pokemon vs Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm really happy for Ash to be in Death Battle, and I think it was time for his Pikachu specifically to get a new spotlight since Blanca. But aside from that, I'm not as hyped as anyone is. There's just one thing I want out of this fight, okay? One. Regardless of if he wins or loses, I want Ash Ketchum to punch Yugi. Just deck him in the face as hard as possible. I wanna hear the sound of like bones cracking a little bit. Like, you may deck it once. Just that. Not only that would be an amazing and hilarious callback to Pokemon vs Digimon, but it's one of the most like underrated in-character thing Ash can do in a Death Battle. Because if he has the balls to wrestle with a Lucario for even doubting his friendship with Pikachu, jump hundreds of feet to snatch Pikachu out of the Team Rocket's blimp, and freaking punch Mewtwo in the dick, he's gonna punch a 1,000-year-old pharaoh for harming his Pokemon. If I don't get a single punch from Ash in that entire fight, I'm dropping the score of this fight by 2 points, no matter how good it is. I don't care.
Done, huh? Thanks for the tip.
Simone the Digger versus Kyle Rayner, or White Lantern as they like to call it for clickability's sake. What started as a silly matchup, the Spite on Ben versus Green Lantern, became one of the most infectious hype matchup since Codex. Even as someone who's not into Gurren Lagann or not into DC deep enough to know about Kyle, I can't help but be excited by this. I've heard so many tales about how powerful these two characters were, how cosmically insane this fight would go down, on an even greater scale than Galactus versus Unicron or Zatanna versus Scarlet Witch. How these heroes are just the physical manifestation of willpower, determination, love for all life, and all the anime motivations in the universe that I love. And do I need to mention how much Brendan Yates carried that matchup with Will of the Drill? I don't think I do. Now, can Death Battle live up to all these things I've been promised about this fight? Maybe? Not if they release it before 2026 at least. Yeah, because remember, they announced that they will be doing 1 episode per month, and the Kickstarter basically funded almost an entire season and a half of Death Battle on its own, so I'd be very surprised if the team managed to make an episode of this magnitude in 1 year or less. So we're gonna have to be patient about them, but you can be sure I'll be waiting for it with open arms. In brightest day and darkest still, no heaven or space can stop the hype.
It is hot as hell in this funky ass, hot ass room I'm in. Is that the Grim Reaper?
Scythe time, it's Scythe time! This matchup was a long time coming. The history between Death Battle and Rooster Teeth is unprecedented, and every Ruby and Soul Eater episode we're leading up to this moment in particular. It all led up to this sheer scythe to scythe action, and I feel mildly okay about it. Now, normally I hoped we could get this one after Ruby concluded. That way we could see Ruby at her full potential and put the nail in this discussion once and for all, but it concluded alright. But more seriously, I have 2 highs and a low about this matchup. First, we're going to get a full-on fight with swinging giant scythe, which is objectively the cooler way of fighting ever. Second, it means we will finally be done with the whole we need to get the 4 main characters before we do anyone else on Death Battle with Ruby, which will unlock a new era for Ruby matchups, like with, for example, with Jean, or with Cinder, or with Salem, with Nora, with Rand, and all that beautiful gallery that's just waiting to get a Death Battle as well. Or, you know, just another Yang fight. I'm okay with that. I like Yang. I'm okay with a Yang fight. But the one low is that I'm gonna have to watch Ruby die. Yeah, apparently Maka wins this match pretty hard, and Ruby is one of those characters that I really don't want to see them lose or die. She's too precious for that. So, the future of Ruby in Death Battle is sure to be bright, but goddamn at what cost?
Run! It's Godzilla!
It looks like Godzilla, but due to international copyright laws, it's not.
Still, we should run like it is Godzilla!
Though it isn't.
Hulk versus Godzilla. The battle of the radioactive destroyers. God, I want to like this matchup. I really do. It's got all of the connections and the premises I like. Mankind's mistakes, the radioactive ravagers of cities. It can all go incredibly hard. And anyone who says this is a bad matchup is wrong, okay? If you think this is a boring matchup, you're just wrong. But there's just one detail that ruins it for me, and it's the same detail I think everyone who dislikes this matchup will point out. It's that goddamn massive size difference. Now, usually I don't like a good David and Goliath, and we've had a lot of those in Death Battle, but here it's less epic or inspiring than it is comical. regardless of who wins. Now, usually I don't mind a good David and Goliath, and we've had a lot of those on Death Battle, but here I find it less epic or inspiring than it is comical, regardless of who wins. I've heard that Hulk has the ability to grow in size if he absorbs enough radiation and whatever, and if it's true, I can definitely see that being added in the fight, but to me that's already too late. Forcing one to get at the other's level for the matchup to work would just take away from these characters more than it can add. Like, when I think of Hulk, I think of a guy who's twice my size and 3 times my width, but he still fits in my apartment at best. When I think of Godzilla, I think of this giant lizard who towers over skyscrapers. If you see a full shot of Godzilla, Hulk would be impossible to see because he's so small. And if you get a shot of Hulk, Godzilla wouldn't fit in on the screen. It doesn't help that I haven't seen Death Battle play well enough with this size difference, especially in Frieza vs. Megatron, which is one of the freshest example of a fight where one is very much taller than the other, so I'm not sure if Death Battle's going to make this interesting for me enough, outside of some things that can be comically cool, like grabbing Godzilla by the tail and swinging him around, or Hulk picking up a building and just like bulk him really hard with it. Kind of like a Green Lantern versus Way Big. But those would be like, what, 5 seconds each? You gotta make the other minutes look cool. I guess this matchup makes me overthink too much, and that's what bothers me about this fight. But I can only hope, and I wish, to be proven wrong. And I also wish for the fans of this matchup to come back to me and rub it in my face when it comes out and it's an actual absolute banger that everyone loves, okay? Can I trust you to do that? Okay? Okay, we're good.
The tall, skinny figure has thrown the oats at me. Me, brother. I believe they have taken a liking to me.
That's right, just like how I get to vote for a rematch, ya boy bought themselves the add-on that's gonna allow them to pitch a matchup directly to Liam and Sam themselves, the writers of Death Battle, apparently on a video call. I don't know how it's gonna go down, and hopefully selling the idea well enough to the right people for them to consider it. This is the part where I'm very torn about, because when others can just go and pitch their most wanted matchups of all time, well, I have to pick between 3 most wanted matchups of all time, so. But the 2 I'm considering the most are Reptile vs. Lizardman and Thrall vs. Gaskell Frogga. I've already covered them in my top 25 most wanted matchup video, so if you want to know more about these 2 matchups, I invite you to check it out. I think they're the matchups I've covered the best. I know Sam has mentioned how Thrall was a solid Warcraft representative to bring on Death Battle during a ballot banter, and I know that Liam said several times that he'd be excited to bring Warhammer 40k on Death Battle cast. So this would be a very good matchup to pitch and imprint on their mind for when it's time to do so. But at the same time, I want to pitch them a matchup that they can, do without being in trouble. And I would love to talk about my Lizard Boys too, I know they know Reptile, but they don't know how underrated Eon is as an opponent, and I have a couple really cool ideas that I'd like to share with them and maybe spread the hype a little bit, but plus if they're going to make a collab with Tori again, there's gonna be flips, so it's worth pointing it out. I know there are people who are considering pitching multiple matchups during their session, but I really want to take the time to really sell one of my favorite idea, Maybe I'll get more occasions in the future, but for now, I want to focus on one, and it's gonna be one of these 2. I'll probably give you a report on my Twitter, so you can follow me there. And with all that, I think that's all the matchups we got guaranteed, besides the last one for Death Battle so far. I'm very sad that we didn't get the goal for Guru vs. Megamind. It was a matchup I was particularly looking forward to, but nothing is cancelled. It just goes back to being an idea that's out there in the wild that Death Battle might be considering to do one day. And if they do, it's just not going to be funded by our donations, and it will have to rely on, sponsors and YouTube money alone, that classic stuff. But honestly, with how much this campaign exploded, I think we managed to secure a long future for the show, and I couldn't be prouder of this community and of everyone who participated. To those lucky bastards who will be able to fly off to Texas to meet the Death Battle crew, as well as those who just spread the word by sharing their passions for the show through montage, through videos, through art, through everything they could show. You guys are just amazing. Everyone who contributed. You can still contribute by subscribing to Death Battle and give them a sweet, sweet membership if you haven't already. But with all that said, I gotta go. I've got some rock dwarves to save. Thank you again so much for watching. If you like this little tangent, don't forget to like. If you are new to the channel, I do reaction videos and make fan arts of every upcoming Death Battle episode live. And if you just want to hang out, I'm currently streaming my playthrough of the World of Warcraft War Within expansion, which I plan to do every week. So subscribe, hit the bell in order to be made aware of any of that. With all that said, that was Taurock at your service, and I'll see you later.